this QR code that you're seeing on somewhere down here. That is my coordinates, and you can just scan it and get that details from there. And if you want, you can just go to flocard.app and create your own brand. That is from your
How I can create on my own?
just go to flocard.app. That's your website, and from there just click on get started, and we either use your Google or LinkedIn account, and we are on.
But I'll check with your QR first.
Sure.
Hi Rohit. So Rohit is a founder for Ranchi Mall, and everything that we're doing on Flow blockchain courtesy of him. So he's someone who introduced us to Flow blockchain, and honestly, all the drive that we have on the dev side, thanks to Rohit and his ideas and vision. So Ranchi Mall itself has been phenomenal in making a lot of these groundbreaking changes. And of course, the approach that Ranchi Mall has is not about PRing all the great effort and let the value get accumulated over a period of time. A very core fundamental that we also work with. So Rohit is the guy behind making things happen.
Wonderful. Welcome, Rohit. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Preeti. A great job. Fundamentally, what we have seen is that the blockchain story is still not, it has not even started.
Yeah.
And the problem, see, any technology that has a reasonable chance to survive, it has to be accessible to majority of the people. And all the blockchain technology that we have till now, Ethereum, Solana, anything you name, all of them are essentially, they are only meant for nerdy peoples of society, like people who have so that technology, if you look at history, has no chance. So like way back in 2017, 2016, we were making the decision that what technology we have to work on. We realized there's no such technology, and so we had to build, and so that's a long journey, it's a short session. So that's why we went on Flow, and now I can say at this point of time, I'm very confident to say that some of the things we can do in Flow, no one else can do. And the ultimate proof of this claim that I made will only come when you get mass consumption. So that's the next target. First, you have to get the technology right, and then you have to get mass consumption in any one area. Flocard is one of the area where we can get mass consumption, because and it will also, and the byproduct is environment, trees will be planted, and that's an amazing byproduct to have. Right. So so that's from my side.
You're absolutely right, Rohit, because any adoption of anything new, be it technology or product or service, comes from the value we show.
Yeah.
And that is what I think we're trying. Also, this is one step. You guys have already started that journey with Flow. Now it's about taking it to people and making them see the value behind it, what they can do, how they can be a part of it. So I think that's where adoption will already start.
Yeah. Adoption is not an easy challenge to solve.
It is not.
Because people get used to their ways of life, and there are a couple of theories out there as to how adoption should be done, but it takes its time. But when the time is there, it just explodes like a nuclear explosion.
Absolutely.
So one of the things, Riti, and that's the wallet session is all about. So if you remember last time we saw MetaMask as a wallet, and we looked at how MetaMask can be utilized. So one of the roundup that I also want to do from a user's understanding, because a lot of us get little fear that what wallet to go with. We come with a lot of bias and experiences of using Paytm and Google Pay or Phone Pay sort of experience. So, but blockchain, we have a very different world when it comes to crypto wallet. And as Rohit rightly pointed out, you really need to be a little bit nerdy to get it. So that's one of the fundamental reason why we took MetaMask first, because it's certainly a popular wallet. NFTs have made it much more usable and popular for different set of audiences. Now we are going to see a Flow wallet, which is a completely different ball game. And again, thanks to the technology that Rohit was mentioning too. The mindset was that, okay, I mean, even if it is non-conventional, but if it makes sense, let's go behind it. So one of the basic premise that we are also experiencing as a user scenario is sign in. So when you go to a Flowcard, you actually have to sign in using a LinkedIn and a Google ID or an Apple ID. Honestly, you don't need it. I mean, what you need is just click a button and you can actually start using feature, and it can allow you to authorize and authenticate and have everything that any other LinkedIn or Google ID does actually. But the problem is, if we enable those features right now, the people think that it's a fake. I mean, so that it's where people think that, okay, there is absolutely no user action which is involved. So there's an amount of graduation that is needed for people to also understand. So these sessions are not programmed to graduate you in the process, but at least give you one more insight on how crypto wallets would work. So, and I think over to Abhijit, because I don't think it will be a very deep dive session, but somewhere in between. And over to you, Abhijit, and we are all tuned to listen to you.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Ramesh. And let me just share my screen and start the session. Please do let me know once the screen is visible, please.
Yep, it's visible, Abhijit.
Thank you. All right. So guys, today's session mostly would revolve around the wallet that we just talked about, which is the Flow blockchain wallet. And let me just first introduce with, so if you remember in the last session when I talked about MetaMask, we specifically mentioned that the MetaMask wallet works with Ethereum and it's the chains that are on top of Ethereum blockchain. And so fundamentally, there could be two different sort of families of blockchains that we usually work with. One is the Bitcoin and its fork wall blockchains like what Flow is, and the other ones are Ethereum and other and the blockchains that basically have evolved around Ethereum. So MetaMask was something which was mostly in the Ethereum family of blockchains, and it allows you to interact with that family of blockchains. When we come to the other side, which is the Bitcoin and its fork wallets or the fork blockchains like Litecoin or in our case, the Flow blockchain, which we are using. And we have used this blockchain to create the Flocard, which is the product that we were talking about. So this basically is a totally different sort of a wallet that or a blockchain that is there, because this fundamentally out of the box does not support something like the smart contracts that we talked about in Ethereum last time, or the NFTs. I won't say that those functionalities or features cannot be implemented in here. We in some form have implemented that on Flow. Rachimol certainly has that, they have got that implemented as well. But the if we talk about smart contracts in the sense that Ethereum has, the approach and the architecture and the technology behind implementing those are different. So if we say that a Solidity developer would automatically be able to deploy smart contracts on Flow blockchain or Bitcoin, that's not possible. So there's a different set of technology fundamentals that are involved in this side of the blockchain family. So in this, I'm not going to dwell deep on how this works or that stuff, but what I'm going to right now do is I'll just tell you how to install the wallet, which you can use to interact with the Flow blockchain. So this is the URL that you need to come to, which is flow.cash. And this is the URL that I'm just going to paste on the chat as well for everyone's attention. So once you come to this, this is the link that you need to go to, which is download wallet. And as soon as you hover over it, you get an option to download either for Windows, Mac, Linux, or other, which basically is your browser that you want to install it into. You just need to click on it, and so basically your respective installer gets downloaded. And since it's basically a installer which is pretty much follows the same Windows or your operating system based installable features, you basically just have to click on it, and you need to go to the installation wizard, just like what I will just show you right here, and it will start installing on your machine. So this is a bit different than what we saw last week on MetaMask, which was basically an Google Chrome or a browser extension. So this is a proper application that you need to install on your machine. The other thing that I would like to talk about while installing this particular instance of the Flo Core Wallet is that it's a core wallet, which means that you are when you install this wallet and you run this, you are actually running a node of the entire blockchain. And what does that mean? It means that the entire copy of the blockchain, you are also hosting one instance of that. Which means that when we say about when we talk about a blockchain, we say that it's a decentralized network. But a decentralized network has different nodes which are hosting the same copy of the blockchain that makes it decentralized. It's not in one place, it's across the network. And these nodes are the ones which are those decentralized nodes which basically make up the network. So as soon as you host one of these nodes or wallets, which is built on top of that node, you actually are part of the entire network, and you are also part of that decentralized community or decentralized network per se. So to install this, you just need to click on the wizard, go through the processes where you select which destination folder you want to install it to. If there is a start menu entry that you want, whatever name you want to give it, and you just click on install. I'm just going to stop at this on my machine, because for me, I've already installed it and I already have this installed on my machine and everything is synced up, because I wanted to show you how the functionalities would work. But if you are doing this for the first time, just go to this URL, download the installation, and just go through the process. As soon as you click on install, it will just take a few seconds for it to install, and there should be a desktop shortcut created, or if not, you can just access it from the start menu. Once you have this, I'll just open up my Flo Core Wallet. You need to go to the start menu. And when you go to your start menu, you should see, and you start typing Flow, you would see two instances of the Flow wallet. One with this yellow icon, which says Flo Core Testnet, and the other one which is with this blue icon, which says Flo Core. So these are two variants of the same wallet that we are talking about. And if you recall the previous session about MetaMask, the MetaMask wallet also allowed us to interact with the testnet and the mainnet network of Ethereum that we looked into. If you remember Ropsten and different testnet networks that we talked about. And so basically testnet is the same or a similar replica of the same blockchain, but it's a different network wherein developers, testers basically work and prove their products and see how they work. But the tokens or the individual points that are used, they do not have they do not actually have any value. They're just used for test purposes. So that is where that testnet and mainnet difference comes up. So this Flo Core wallet can be instantiated both as onto the testnet or onto the mainnet. Currently, what I have just opened up is the mainnet. I just want to show you how this opens up. So for the first time, when you install it and start it, it will take some time, because as I mentioned, it's a complete full blockchain node that you are actually deploying on your machine. So what will happen is that you will see this screen come up and you will see some status entries that just go down at the bottom. Right now, for me, it says loading block index. So what it is doing in the backend is it is connecting to the decentralized network. It is getting all the blocks that are currently there in the blockchain, which are committed. And then it is comparing them with the current blockchain that you have on your own machine. What it is also doing is it is checking for its validity and whether the branch or the blockchain that I currently have on my machine, whether that is the one that is actually the latest chain that is available on the decentralized network. If there is any mismatch, it basically rewinds those. It basically corrects those changes and takes your chain to that particular blockchain, which is the current latest blockchain that is available. So once this is open up, you will see this particular sort of a screen. For me, if you look at this bottom part of the screen with the progress bar, it says that I am 9 days behind, which means that the copy of the blockchain that I have on my machine, that is 9 days old than the actual blockchain entries that are currently onto the network, which means all the entries that all the data that I have for the blockchain, that is 9 days older. And now what it is doing is it is syncing the blockchain on my machine with the network blockchain. And this, because I only have a 9-day backlog, it won't take much time and it should be completed in a few seconds while we are talking, and this screen just goes away and you see your account balance and everything like what you saw on MetaMask. You will see in here as well, whatever Flow tokens you have, you basically are able to see those and you can spend or transact those. For the first time users, this process will take time, because for you, the blockchain would be synced back from the first time when this blockchain started, which is the first block, which was the Genesis block. So that was about 4 to 5 years old. And 4 to 5 years is the time before when it was created. And once you start this, you will see that your status would show that it's this many years behind, and that will take time. And so that is something which you have to bear for the first time if you want to have the Flo Core wallet instantiated on your machine and you want to work on this. You will have to give that time. What you also have to do is it might take a few hours. Just as a heads up, it might take a few hours for it to get entirely synced up. You will see the entire progress over here. And while that's happening, you have to keep your machine on and the internet connection active. So it would take about a few GBs, like 4 to 5 GB of space on your machine, and the entire blockchain would basically be synced on your machine. So once that happens, you are pretty much set and you are now ready to transact on the Flow blockchain. Exactly like how MetaMask, we saw that once we set up everything, to do any sort of transaction, we need Flow coins, the Ethereum Ether tokens. Similarly, in here also, you would need Flow tokens. How do you get those? You pretty much have to either mine the Flow tokens using any sort of mining tools or by joining a mining pool. By the way, we have a few sessions later on in near future where we'll also talk about how to basically mine on blockchains using CPU, GPU, using mining pools. So those sort of basics would also be covered. So that's how we can get the Flow tokens that we want. That is one way. The other way would be if any of your known contacts or your friends have that, you can ask them to send some to you, or you can buy some Flow tokens on any exchange that basically trades Flow blockchain. So any exchange information where these Flow tokens are transacted, you can pretty much get those from in here. So these are some of the exchanges where Flow is traded. But since the site has been not updated for some time, there might be some of the exchanges which might not be trading Flow as of this point in time. But I think Bittrex and some of the exchanges still are trading Flow coins as of this point in time. So as you can see, as I opened and my entire blockchain synced right now, this is the dashboard or the screen that comes up, and I can see that I have about 10.61 something Flow coins that I have available on my wallet. And this is a mainnet token that we have, and this is the available balance. In here, you also see this entry which says pending. So how does this work? That if you have, say someone has sent you some amount of Flow, maybe 1 or 2 flows to you, but that has still not been verified by the blockchain network, by the miner pool, or it is still under process, and that is still pending, and it has not gone to the blockchain or not been committed to the blockchain because it has not been mined. So until that happens, your total balance would reflect that, but it would also say that that amount of Flow token that you have, it is still pending and it is still not usable, or it is still not spendable. You cannot spend that until that has been mined or verified. So it is a status that just you can see in here. Now, just to go through all the overview tabs that we have over here, the first one just gives you all the 5 recent transactions that you have made, whether it's an incoming transaction or an outgoing transaction, from or to which address, what was the timestamp, what was the amount of Flow that was transacted, and all those things, plus the balances. Then you have this send tab, where you can send Flow tokens to any address on the blockchain. By the way, the blockchain addresses, the concepts of blockchain addresses, as we talked about in MetaMask, this is exactly the same. You have a key pair, a public and a private key pair that you have. Public addresses are something which you can share with anyone so that they can send the transactions to you on that. And to claim those transactions, you need to be in possession of the private key for that. So when you create those key pairs on the wallet itself, on the Flo Core wallet itself, everything is managed directly by the wallet itself. You do not have to enter the private key in anywhere. It is all being managed by the Flo Core wallet by itself. So to come to this screen, this is a send screen wherein you just need to put the address of the receiver to whom you want to send the flow tokens to. You just have to put in the amount, the number of flow tokens you want to send. And this is the main USP of Flow blockchain, which is flow data. And Flow blockchain, like MetaMask, like Ethereum blockchain and its related blockchains based on Ethereum, the USP of them is they allow you to create those smart contracts, which by default is not available in Flow. But Flow has something which Ethereum and its subchains do not have, which is storage of 1040 characters of plain text data. So storing of data onto blockchain is a very massive thing. You can create your own protocols, you can create your own rules, you can create your own, commit your own data along with these transactions. So you can pretty much store about 1040 bytes of data, which is around 1040 characters of information, plain text, anything directly on the blockchain, and that would be available for use. And that is where this flow data label comes up. So when you send some amount of flow to anyone, you just put the address of the receiver, the amount, and what information you want to send. It could just be a hello message, or it could be a complex protocol, or any rule that can also be sent. Now, in Flow, the transaction fee, which was equivalent to what we saw in MetaMask as well, there was a network fee that was involved whenever you did a transaction. And when in smart contracts, we deployed a smart contract or an NFT, there was another which was called gas, which is the amount you spend to basically deploy those smart contracts. There is a similar transaction fee involved in Flow as well, right? Because it is until and unless that fee is paid by either the sender or the receiver, why would anyone mine that, or why would anyone validate that? It's the miners who are basically keeping the network alive and keeping everything going. They need some sort of an incentive, and that incentive is something which is this transaction fee, which is part of every transaction that you do, and the miners who mine them pretty much are the ones who get these transaction fees committed to them. So this is where you just put the address, the amount, the label, and the transaction fee is basically calculated. It's an automated calculation that happens, and the amount of transaction fee that you need to expend is actually based on the amount of flow data that you send. So the larger amount of the flow data that you send, the higher data or the higher transaction fee it may incur. So it is a flow per KB information that you see. So by default, it is 0.00002 flow per KB. You can choose or you can change this, but you should know how to do that. You should be an advanced user to choose a transaction fee, because if you choose it very low, there is a chance that your transaction may not get mined and may be rejected by the network. Or if it is too high, you are paying too much for something which you should have paid lesser for. So those are some things that you need to decide, or else just leave it as an automatic value, which gets automatically calculated by the wallet. Then this is the receive tab. If you want to receive some flow from somewhere, you need to give them an address. So just to create a receive address, I will just create a label called, let's say, that test address or something. And as soon as I click on request payment, I will see this QR code. I can share this QR code with the person whom I'm expecting the flow tokens to come from. And this is the address that you see, which is on the QR code as well, along with the text information in here. So this is your public identity. This is the public address, which gives you access to, or you just created a public address for this. Now anyone can send transactions or amount of flow tokens to this. And since it is created on the Flo Core Wallet, the private keys are managed by the Flo Core Wallet itself. Any transaction that comes into this address, it is automatically gonna show up in my balances, because I can pretty much prove the ownership of this address and all the transactions that have been done on this. So that is how this pretty much works, wherein you just create a request address and you can ask anyone to send this. The last tab that we are going to see is a transaction. So this is sort of a ledger wherein all the transactions that you have made in this wallet using any addresses, they pretty much are shown over here. So you can see that I have made a lot of transactions on this. So whatever transactions are there, the timestamp, the type of the payment, whether it was a payment done or it was received from somewhere, if there was a label that was attached, what was the flow data that was part of that particular flow transaction, and the amount that was transacted. You can pretty much see everything. Now, if you also want to see some details about this, you can just double click on any of the rows and you can pretty much see the details of this transaction. The details show the status, which is how many miners have confirmed this right now, or how many confirmations have happened for this particular transaction, what was the day, to whom it was sent to, the address, or if there was a name or a label attached to it, what was the amount debited, what was the transaction fee, what was the net amount, what was the comment or the flow data comment that was added, and what was the flow data that was sent on this transaction. Also in here, you will see this alphanumeric set of characters. And this is important. For every transaction that happens on blockchain, as you saw on MetaMask as well, that every transaction that happens on blockchain, it has a unique identifier, and that is called as a transaction ID. And later on in the sessions, when we look into blockchain explorers, we will see how these transaction IDs can pretty much be looked into. They could be decoded, and they pretty much can be explored on the blockchain explorer applications that are available. So this transaction ID is basically your identifier for any transaction that happens on the blockchain. So this is the transaction ID that happened for the transaction that I just clicked on. So in a nutshell, this is all that is required for any new user. But if you are someone who wants to explore further into this particular wallet, you can also go to the settings. You can tinker with these. Like if you can go to the wallet, you can enable this option, which is called the coin control feature. And automatically, when you enable this, you will see the send tab gets some more options available. Now in this, so in blockchain, what happens is when you use these sort of wallets like the Flo Core Wallet, they internally manage many addresses which are called change addresses. Like for example, if I want to transact 0.5 flow and I want to send that to Amitesh, what happens is I have one flow token, which is 1 unit, and I want to send 0.5 to Amitesh. What would happen is the transaction that would be done would be one flow token sent to Amitesh and his address, keeping the 0.5 and then returning back the 0.5 back to me minus the transaction fee, which is the change that he gives me back. It is exactly how it happens in real world as well. If you want to spend 50 rupees and you have a 100 rupee note, you cannot tear that 100 rupee note into two pieces. You give that 100 rupee note to the shopkeeper. He keeps the 100 rupee note and he gives you back a 50 rupee note, and that is called as a change. And that change is again, that change just comes back to you. This is exactly what happens in the blockchain as well. But by default in the core wallets, what happens is the change address where the change comes back to, it's a random address that gets calculated, and it's every time a new address is calculated for the change address. But if you do not want to do that, and if you want a specific address, maybe the one that you send the amount from, you want the change to come back to that exact same address, you pretty much can enable the coin control feature. And in here, you can put the custom change address and you can put your send address in here. So what would happen is once the change comes back, it comes back to the same exact address if you want that. So this is something which you can tinker with and see. Similarly, if you want to deep dive more and you want to see what different options and commands this Flo Core wallet internally uses, you can pretty much go to the help and click on the debug window, and that will open this up. It has its own tabs like the information about the wallet. Then you have this console, which is a command line, wherein if you just type in help, you will see all the different commands that are available in the blockchain, in this particular Flow blockchain, and you can try this on and do transactions through the command line base. These are for advanced users. These are called RPC commands. Then you have the network traffic, which basically tells you all the incoming and outgoing transactions that the Flo Core wallet made, and all the peers, which means all the nodes that your current node is connected to on the Flow blockchain. So this basically is something that you can definitely try if you want to have a look at some advanced options. The testnet is something, if you want, like what I showed you, if you just go and type in Flow, you will have the option of Flo Core and the Flo Core testnet. I'm not going to open up testnet again because the features, functionalities, UI, everything is exactly the same. It is just that it connects to a different network, which is the testnet network, and you basically interact with that. Now, this is a full-blown Flo Core wallet that we have, and that is how you pretty much can interact with this. So I hope it was informational and helpful. And if there are any questions, I would be happy to address those.
Thank you, Abhijit. Abhijit, I think I'm not sure if anyone has a question, but I do have a question from the developer standpoint. So as a developer, where to begin and what needs to be done? And I mean, why is it different to have a MetaMask driven strategy or flow driven strategy sort of approach? So as a developer, if you have some tips.
Sure. So as a developer, Mitesh, when we talk about blockchain or when we hear about blockchains, sometimes we feel that blockchains are like do all sort of things. But as a dev, if you ask me, blockchain is just one part of your entire solution. It is not something which can do all. And in blockchain also, based on your scenarios, based on your use cases, it is quite possible that you might have to use multiple blockchains for different uses that you have in your application. Like for example, you might want to use Flow blockchain for storage or validation of information into blockchain. Flow blockchain gives you that 1040 characters of information that can be stored on blockchain, that can be leveraged in a different level. Ethereum smart contracts give you a sort of EVM based smart contract and NFT tool by default. So your application could be something which could leverage the best out of both worlds or best out of different worlds. To start as a developer, if you are going down the path of this flow or this type of blockchain, I would suggest that first install this blockchain wallet node, go through that RPC commands. It will give you a lot of insights as to how the blockchain transactions work. Then you can go to one of our GitHub repositories, which is for a SDK that we have created for Flow, this Flow blockchain, but that is on C# language. If you are a C# developer, you pretty much can work on that. I'll just try to put that link over here and the GitHub repository. If you are a JavaScript or open source developer, Ranchi Mall has huge number of repositories. They do have light wallets as well, which basically do not require you to install the entire blockchain node like what we saw. It's just a HTML file wherein you can just create your addresses and start interacting with the blockchain. So I'm just gonna put the repositories for Ranchi Mall GitHub as well, if anyone wants to visit and see their work. So that is something that you can also do. So these are all resources and places where you can visit to start if you are developers. So I do see a question from Sogato. What does confirmations mean in the details tab? So Sogato, confirmations basically mean that as soon as you do a transaction, the transaction doesn't automatically mean that it will be part of the blockchain. So every blockchain has a block time, means that the transactions that happen in a network, they are committed to the network, and the network, the miner pool basically validates those transactions by virtue of the mining process. And when the transactions are found to be valid, then those are made part of the next block that comes into the blockchain. And what happens is that the number of confirmations that usually, in fact, even one confirmation is enough for that particular transaction to be made part of the block. But the more number of confirmations that a transaction has, it means that it has been validated that many number of times, and the number of confirmations basically validate that the transaction is pretty much something which can be which has been verified. So it is basically every time a a miner mines those blocks, they pretty much can see, you basically see the number of confirmations keep on increasing. So as time goes in, you will see that the number of confirmations that a particular transaction has, it keeps on growing more and more. Yeah, thanks Rohit for the link on the. So Rohit has also put up the link for the light wallet that we talked about, which Rachima has created. That is the Flow Web wallet that we.
And I think there's a question from Rajiv Gupta. What is the difference between a Flow blockchain and a blockchain? So I think it's the same thing. What's the difference between a country and a world? So it's exactly something similar. So blockchain in general is utilized as a terminology now, but I kind of understand where this question is coming from, because when Bitcoin was invented, so the default name was taken by a Bitcoin blockchain as a blockchain. But now blockchain has become more of a generic terminology which follows certain procedure and process. So it's more to that. So please do not get confused. Now people also talk in complete detail. Even the developers on the Bitcoin world, they say very clearly that it's a Bitcoin blockchain or a Flow blockchain or Ethereum blockchain, or just the name if it is popular. So that's pretty much it. No, one last question, Abhijit, that I have on because we're talking wallet, and so you did mention that wallet is just one part of a different solution overall. So if we have to get started and if we have to actually build some application on top of blockchain, so if just as a closing remark, if you can tell us how to get started with the blockchain application development for whatever requirement we may have.
So start with either, if you're going down the Ethereum path, start with MetaMask, install this Flo Core Wallet, or start with all the web wallet, and create your address first. And as soon as you create those addresses first, you are part of the blockchain. And as soon as you create that, start interacting with the blockchain testnets first. Get all the testnet points. You can mine your own testnet points, which we'll be covering in the later parts. And then it's up to the use case that you have, and that basically is all that is required to start, at least to take the first steps.
Okay. There's a question from Anshu. Is there any difference in treatment between a merchant or an individual on a blockchain wallet? Can these
No.
transactions be audited by government agencies?
Actually, Anshu, there is.
Sorry, I'll first take one part of it. So can audited by government agencies? Yes. I mean, anything which is in the public information database, yes. But do they know what that ID and whose ID is that? That's a part of the government KYC process. So one of the things that happened during the exchange war in India was the fact that anybody can do any transaction, and people say it anonymous, but of course there is an ID which is associated with it. So blockchain gives you a public ID, which is much more stringent than your Aadhaar ID in a way, actually. But at the moment you disclose your ID, that this is my public ID, you go on a Twitter and say that, okay, this is my ID. Of course, you are disclosing yourself. So then government is actually going to use that data point and say, okay, all the transactions with this ID, we know what it is. And of course, they might ask proof. I'm aware of a scenario when people have received notices from tax government and saying that this is a money that has come to an account from this certain exchange. Please give us the details of the transaction. So, and it has been an easy ride for them, because they can just go back to the blockchain and figure out all the transaction and just take a printout of it and claim that, yeah, this is all the transaction that we have done, and this is all the money that we made, and this is how it has happened. So auditing, again, it's left up to the government with the purpose and intent behind it. See, and there is absolutely no way to differentiate who is carrying that ID. It could be an entity, it could be an asset, it could be an individual, it could be a machine. And there is absolutely no way to identify who is behind that ID unless until you flag it. So for example, the data point that Abhijit was showing in the Flow wallet, where you have 1040 bytes of data. I mean, if he puts a plain text that my name is Amitesh and this is my ID, and I'm making sure this always stays as my ID, of course, you're disclosing yourself. So once you have done that, then I've identified as an individual. Similarly, a merchant can also do the same thing. Now, it could depend on case-to-case basis, why or whether or not you want to do it. Based on, and now there are certain data protection guidelines. I mean, specifically in UAE, what we are experiencing, there's a new data guideline that has come in, and most of these large organizations need to get data protection officers on board. and which is primarily to safeguard data and from the data and privacy interest per se. So blockchain is privacy first by design. It is your choice to what level, to what degree you want to unlock it and want to disclose your details as a part of it.
Thanks for that, Amitesh. There's a question by Sugato. He says, is there any time limit for the transaction to receive confirmations of validation?
Yes, Sugato, and we would wish to take that question in detail in the detailed course. Please subscribe to the course. You'll have to pay some money and be a part of a training. Free में बस इतना ही मिलता है. नहीं यार, there is. You can always reach out separately and talk.
Oh, I had a very basic question, maybe from a layman perspective, since it is new to me also. So how does this mining thing work with Flocard, right? Are you mining the Flo coins, or what happens?
Yeah, so I mean, everybody has to mine. So this confirmations that we have been talking about, so this confirmations are nothing but an outcome of a mining activity. So what is mining? Mining is basically, for a general sense, there is someone who, not someone, there's something which is basically a computer program, which basically says that, okay, this record, yes, check. This record, yes, check. Now collection of this record, make it one block, check. And then you commit it somewhere and saying that, okay, this is all signed basically. So now I gave that confirmation, Abhijit gave that confirmation, Sugato gave that confirmation, Rohit gave that confirmation. So many people are verifying that information, yes, check. And then, so basically our programs do it. So this entire circus of getting and collaboration happening is exactly a mining at a very, very high level. So of course, there are two families of blockchain. I mean, as Abhijit was mentioning, Ethereum is one family, Bitcoin is another, and Flow is as a part of a Bitcoin family. So you have a different mining procedure and process, and then there are different rules that are applied across blockchain. But fundamentally, all of this record have to be validated and put it into a central place for people to say that this is a check record. So for Flow, we are very thankful to Ranchi Mall, who've been actually putting a lot of effort. They have a dedicated team, and I mean, I think great that you brought that point, Riti. I mean, there is a guy called Shivam in that group, and I'm so amazed by his amount of commitment that he has. I mean, at times I get a feeling that he's actually a computer and not a human. So there is actual team who's working behind it and ensuring that most of these minings are done. And it's not just Ranchi Mall. There are global communities. There are something called as pools, mega pools, super pools, who actually plug in their resources to mine this. So, and it's a very, very collaborative effort at a global scale level, which is done. So mining is an important activity. And yes, if it has to do with how do you make money from mining, subscribe to the training.
So there can be a point where we can start trading using Flo coins. Is that possible?
So if you are a Flocard user, you can start trading right away.
Okay.
It's just that we are not educating people how to do it now, but soon we will.
Okay. Nice. Okay. I think
it was a great session, Abhijit. So thank you for all the awesome Gyan and session.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Abhijit. Great session. I think let's look forward for the next session coming up next Sunday. And if you just want to introduce the topic, a brief introduction of what we're going to do next Sunday.
I think the next topic would be around cryptography. So we talked about a lot of elements around cryptography, encryption, decryption, signing, hashes, transactions, everything. So we would like to just touch base upon some of the fundamentals and what cryptography is. Then I believe so one session would be around symmetric, asymmetric cryptography and the algorithms used over there. So we would just talk about those so that people just know how or what's happening in between.
And then did you look that Sugato today intelligently put his profile picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has been super attentive guy. At least in the profile picture.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Great.
Thank
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.